experience, which I have also had, in my view, is more intense and more powerful, almost to the point of being overwhelming, than the ayahuasca experience. But what the result of this sophisticated chemistry that we find taking place here is a brew which is hideous to drink. The taste, I find it quite repulsive. I almost retch just smelling it in the cup. But then unleashes these extraordinary experiences, and it isn't just pretty visuals. It's the sense of encounters with sentient others, that there are sentient beings, that somehow we're surrounded by a realm of sentience that is not normally accessible to us. And that what the ayahuasca brew and certain other psychedelics, like some psilocybin mushrooms in a high enough dose can do it as well. LSD can do it, but ayahuasca is the master in this, of lowering the veil to what appears to be a seamlessly convincing other realm, other world. And of course, the hardline rational scientists will say that's just all fantasies of your brain. But I don't think we fully understand, or even close to understanding, exactly what consciousness is. And I remain open to two possibilities: that consciousness is generated by the brain, is made by the brain in the way that a factory makes cars. But I also am open to the possibility that the brain is a receiver of consciousness, just as a television set is the receiver of television signals. That if that is...
That's very fascinating. That's an interesting idea. I haven't heard that, but it makes sense. I mean, this is the hardware necessary to receive a certain signal from source, from greater consciousness, God.
If that is the case, then we, locked into the physical realm, we need our everyday alert problem-solving state of consciousness. And that's the state of consciousness that Western civilization values and highly encourages. But these other states of consciousness that allow us...
Western civilization, I think he means just more so a capitalistic, materialistic, perspective of human existence. Use this body as much as you can in this material world to take care of yourself and survive, and that. But as far as the spiritual side, Western, I'd say it's not Western civilization, because Western civilization is Christian. But why am I blanking? Secular Western civilization promotes the usage of yourself in this material world for material gains. It promotes that over its spiritual function. Anyways, let's go.
To access alternative realities are possibly more important. It may be apocryphal, but it was reported after Francis Crick's role and his Nobel Prize for the discovery of the double helix that he finally got it under the influence of LSD. There's the classic example of Kerry Mullis and the polymerase chain reaction. He said he got that under the influence of LSD. So the notion that the alert problem-solving state of consciousness is the only valuable state of consciousness is disproved by valuable experiences that people have had in a visionary state. But the question that remains unresolved is those entities that we encounter and not everybody encounters them, and you're certainly not going to encounter them on every ayahuasca trip. There are ayahuasca journeys where nothing seems to happen. I suspect something does happen, but it happens at a subconscious level. I know that shamans in the Amazon regard those trips where actually you don't see visions as amongst the most valuable, and they say you are learning stuff that you're not remembering, but you're learning it anyway. These sentient others that are encountered, what are they? Are they just figments of our brain on drugs? Or are we actually gaining access to a parallel reality which is inhabited by consciousness, which is in a non-physical form? And I'm equally open to that idea. I think that may be what is going on here with ayahuasca. But the other thing is that there is a presence within the ayahuasca brew, and she is present both in ayahuasca and in yahe. And that's one of the reasons why the shamans say that actually the master of the process is the ayahuasca vine, not the leaves. It's as though the vine has harnessed the leaves to gain access to human consciousness. And there, if you have sufficient exposure to ayahuasca or yahe, you drink it enough times. I've had maybe 75 or 80 journeys with ayahuasca. You definitely start to feel an intelligent presence with a definite personality, which I interpret as feminine, and which most people in the West interpret it as feminine, and they call her Mother Ayahuasca. There are some tribes in the Amazon who interpret the spirit of ayahuasca as male, but in all cases, that spirit is seen as a teacher. That's fundamentally what ayahuasca is. It's a teacher, and it teaches moral lessons. And that's fascinating, that a mixture of two plants should cause us to reflect on our own behavior and how it may have hurt and damaged and affected others, and fill us with a powerful wish not to repeat that negative behavior again in the future. The more baggage you carry in your life, behavior cause us to reflect on our own behavior and how it may have hurt and damaged and affected others, and fill us with a powerful wish not to repeat that negative behavior again in the future. The more baggage you carry in your life, the harder the beating that ayahuasca is going to give you, until it forces you to confront and take responsibility for your own behavior. And that is an extraordinary thing to come from a plant brew in that way. And I think I think
whenever I eat kale, I don't get that experience. So, yeah, very powerful.
Ayahuasca is the most powerful of all the plant medicines for accessing these mysterious realms. But there's no doubt you can access them. They're all tryptamines. They're all related to one another in one way. You can access them through LSD, and you certainly can access them through psilocybin mushrooms as well in large enough dose.
Both possibilities, as you describe, are interesting, and to me, they're kind of akin to each other. I wonder what the limit of the brain's capacity is to create imaginary worlds and treat them seriously and make them real, and in those worlds explore and have real sort of moral, deep brainstorming sessions with those entities. So it's almost like the power of the human mind to imagine taken to its limit.
It is. And the curious thing is that the same iconography, people paint their visions after ayahuasca sessions. People were painting in Europe in the cave of Lascaux, for example, and of course they had access to psilocybin mushrooms in prehistoric Europe. There's a remarkable commonality in the imagery that is painted. I like to give credit where credit is due, and there are two names that need to be mentioned here. One is the late, great Terence McKenna and his book, Food of the Gods, where he proposed the idea very strongly that it was our ancestral encounters with psychedelics that made us fully human. That's what switched on the modern human mind. And very much the same idea began to be explored a bit earlier by Professor David Lewis Williams at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. Fabulous book called The Mind in the Cave, where he is again arguing that these astonishing similarities in cave art and rock art all around the world can only be properly explained by people in deeply altered states of consciousness attempting to remember, when they return to a normal everyday state of consciousness, attempting to remember their visions and document them on permanent media like the wall of a cave. So typically you get a lot of geometric patterns, but you also got entities. And those entities often are therianthropes, part animal, part human in form, might have the head of a wolf and the body of a human being, might have the head of a bird and the body of a human being, and so on and so forth, and that they communicate with us in the visionary state. Interestingly, although this sounds like woo-woo, and it is an area that most scientists would steer clear of at risk of their careers. There is very serious work now being done at Imperial College in London and at the University of California at San Diego, where volunteers are being given extended DMT. There's a new technology, DMTX, where the DMT is fed directly into the bloodstream by drip, and it's possible to keep the individual in the peak DMT state, which normally when you smoke or vape DMT, you're looking, if you're lucky, at 10 minutes. Or if you're unlucky, if it's a bad journey, because those 10 minutes can seem like forever. But with DMTX, with the drip feeding of DMT into the bloodstream, these volunteers actually could be kept in the peak state for hours. And unlike LSD, where you rapidly build up tolerance, nobody ever builds up tolerance to DMT. It always hits you with the same power. Even if you took it yesterday and the day before, and you're taking it tomorrow as well, it's still going to have that same power. There's no tolerance there. So that's how they can use that lack of tolerance to keep volunteers in this state. And then when they debrief those volunteers, they're also putting them in MRI scanners and looking at what's happening in the brain. But when they debrief them, they're all talking about encounters with sentient others. There's even a group now called Sentient Others, where people are exchanging, volunteers are now exchanging their experiences. They weren't allowed to do so at the beginning of the experiment, but now that most of them have left it, they're exchanging their experiences, and it's all about encounters with sentient others who wish to teach them moral lessons. Now, to me, that's wild. What is going on here?
Sentient others.
How do we account for this? Yeah, I get the notion of hallucinations and brightly colored visuals, but the moral lessons that come with it, those are very odd.
Yeah, and would you say that the reason that could give birth to a civilization is it because such visions can help create myths, and especially like religious myths, that would be a cohesive thing for a large group of people to get around?
Huge stretch.
Yeah, and can help us to be better members of our own community.
Right, with the moral lessons.
Yeah, more contributing members of our community.
So that's where there's a lot of like, it seems as if, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people will make that jump, especially with the Brian Muraresku book, the mystery, the key, the something key. Oh, why am I blanking? The key. Oh man, why am I? The immortality key. Okay, so the immortality key, and I just feel like that leap is just too much, because the religions that, you know, like Lex just said, like it, religions, but which ones? Because when you think about the origins of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they're based on people who had experiences, and maybe you can disagree on the validity of those experiences and whether they were expanded upon, hyperbolic, mythologized, or whatnot. But those were actually actual people. I don't think that like taking a psychedelic is going to make you create that story. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just that's a weird. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I probably am. Let's get back to this. Boom, 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 boom.
The more caring, more nurturing members of our community. That's got to be good for any community. I've said this a dozen times, but I'll say it again. If I had the power to do so, I would make it a law an absolute law that anybody running for a powerful political position, particularly if that position is president or head of state in any kind of way, that person has to undergo the ayahuasca ordeal first. They have to have 10 or 12 sessions of ayahuasca.
Okay. 10 or 12 sessions? That's insane, bruh. And then making it a law is even sillier too. What it's going to get to is simply we are going to have more open discussions with politicians or candidates who are running, just like what's happening right now. You have RFK, you have Donald Trump, you have Tulsi Gabbard, you have J.D. Vance. They're doing these long form conversations, all right, and eventually you're going to have these people, the people who are running, have experience these psychedelic medicines and talk about it. It's not going to be like you have to make it a law that your politicians should do this. What people are going to realize, hopefully, if this psychedelic medicine is transformative and makes you a better person, a better family man, a better husband, a better father, a better friend, then people are going to do it, and then those people are going to run for office. So it's going to naturally happen because of this open communication and the exposing of, quote unquote, the benefits of these psychedelic medicines. So, if Joe Rogan ran right now, I think he would win. I think he would win the vote. Just because everybody knows him and they trust him. Now, he's also been open about his psychedelic medicine use, so, he's like a prime example of like the poster boy for not creating a law to make it necessary. It's just those people are going to express themselves on the internet more and hopefully be trustworthy, and then people will see that, and they'll want that person to be in a leadership position. And that's kind of how it goes.
As a condition for applying for the job, I suspect that most who had those experiences wouldn't want to apply for the job anymore. They would want to live a different kind of life. And those who did want to carry on being a leader of a nation would be very different people from the people who are leading the nations of the earth into chaos and destruction today.
Yeah, they would be doing it for the right reasons. I mentioned to you, I recently interviewed Donald Trump and actually brought up this same idea that it would be a much better world if most of Congress and most politicians would take some form of psychedelic at the very least.
I have no doubt that it would be a better world. I mean, this raises an interesting point, which is the role of government in controlling our consciousness. And in my opinion, the so-called war on drugs is one of the fundamental abuses of human rights that have been undertaken in the past 60 years. It should be a Republican issue. If I understand the Republican Party correctly, the Republican Party believes in individual freedom for adults as much as possible, and particularly the freedom to make choices over their own bodies. But in the case of even cannabis, I know that's one of the great things that's happening in America. It's happening state by state, where cannabis is being legalized, and that draconian hand of government is being taken off the back of people who are consuming a medicine that is far less harmful than alcohol, which is glorified in our society. We cannot say that we are free if we allow a government to dictate to us what experiences we may or may not have in our inner consciousness while doing no harm to others. And the point there is, We already have a whole raft of laws that deal with us when we do harm to others. Do we really need laws that tell us what we may or may not experience in the inner sanctum of our own consciousness? I think it's a fundamental violation of adult sovereignty, and we would have much less drug problems if these drugs were all legalized and made available to people without shaming them, without punishing them in any way, but just part of normal social life. And then you could be sure that you were getting good product rather than really shitty product, which has been cut with all sorts of other things. Ultimately, the way forward is for adults to take responsibility for their own behavior and for society to allow that to happen, and not to have big government taking responsibility for decisions that should be in the hands of individuals.
And for me also, it's exciting some of these substances like psilocybin are being integrated into scientific studies, large scales. It's really interesting.
We've seen a revolution in the way science looks at psychedelics in the last 20, 25 years. They were in that highly demonized category. But again, it's one of those paradigms which gets overwhelmed by new evidence, and it began to be realized that psilocybin and other psychedelics are very helpful in a range of conditions from which people suffer. Post-traumatic stress disorder, the fear of death when you're suffering from terminal cancer can be overwhelming, and it's been found that psilocybin can remove that. Deep depressions can be evaporated with one single massive psilocybin journey. They just go away. There's really good science on this, and they are being integrated into conventional medicine more and more. We'll see it happening. I'm not sure if it'll happen as fast as I would like to see it happen in my lifetime, but it is going to happen.
Yeah, actually, just recently found out that you had a TED Talk, War on Consciousness.
Yes.
That was taken down.
Yeah.
And that was just part of just the general resistance, because it wasn't a radical.
Dang.
It wasn't really a radical.
I was talking about ayahuasca, and I was talking about the view that I hold very strongly, that as long as we do no harm to others, sovereign adults should be allowed to make decisions about their own bodies and not face a jail sentence or shaming as a result. But so it was a TEDx talk, not a TED Talk, organized by a local TED group. They call them TEDx talks, and I gave this talk about the war on consciousness, and it was immediately pulled down from TED's main channel with all kinds of bizarre reasons being given. But unfortunately, it was too late, because a number of people had already downloaded the talk and then uploaded it onto other YouTube channels. And actually, their banning of it made it go viral in a way that would not have happened otherwise. But again, it's a sign that points of view that are not acceptable to those in positions of power are simply dismissed and shut down, or at least attempts are made to do so.
In general, just along that line of thinking, I'm pretty sure that what we understand about consciousness today will seem silly to humans from 100 years from now.
You bet it will, especially if we harness psychedelics to investigate consciousness, and that is what is happening at Imperial College right now. Is the investigation of the experience. They're not looking. There are other trials that are looking for the therapeutic potential of DMT, but in this case, they're looking entirely at the experiences that people have and why they're so similar from people from different age groups and different genders and different parts of the world are all having the same experiences.
Very fascinating. These we are going to look at consciousness very differently in 100 years. Like my kids, my grandkids will know a lot more than my generation, and more than I did when I was a kid. I mean, I didn't like I believed all the propaganda around it, and it's sad because you demonize something for so long. It's kind of hard to convince yourself that you were lied to, for a long time. Because then you have to accept that you were someone who could be lied to for a long time. So that sucks. But if you can get over that, which I did, then I mean, you can, obviously do that in other aspects of your life. And I think that's very important. I think a lot of people, I think this is what happens. Everybody has a view on something, and they find out if they're right or wrong on it later on. And then what they come to realize is whether they are able to let that old assumption, let it go, and then adopt this new conclusion. Anyways, yeah, very fascinating. 75 ayahuasca trips, man. Wow, that's crazy. I'm just so fearful that that would mess up my relationship with reality, because it's an altered state. It's not the normal state of being, right? So should you be putting yourself in that state consistently over and over and over again? I don't know. To me, that doesn't make sense, even though I've had great life-changing experiences on 5 grams of psilocybin in a therapeutic situation. I don't have any desire to do it again. And I honestly don't think that there was more for me to get. By the end of that second one, I was done. I was ready for it to be over. I was like, okay, cool. I got it. And I need to move on. I need to implement all this. I need to implement all of this. And that's what I've got to do. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. But I got to do it. And a part of my implementation of that is just putting my thoughts out there into the universe. Because I enjoy it. And it's fun. I want to talk to people and whatever. But as far as doing more, like Graham Hancock, no desire. But also I never did ayahuasca, so that could be a whole different experience, and I might want to do it all the time.